Right. Welcome, everybody. I see 6:30 this evening, Monday, July the 7th. Welcome to this week's Planning and Land Use Committee meeting. I need to call this meeting to order. We were acknowledged with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of Lekwungen speaking peoples, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the Songhees and Swepsum nations. Approval of the agenda. Looking for a mover. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. Adoption of minutes. We have a set of minutes back in looks like June the 2nd, 2025. A mover from this end of the table. Thank you so much. Discussion? Anyone opposed? Thank you so much. All right. And we are at the participation. Remember, the public are afforded 20 minutes maximum to step forward and address the committee. Councillor Day, kick us off.
Thanks, Cynthia Day, 3546 Charnley Place. And I'm here tonight just to speak to the OCP. Not all of you may have been involved in the extensive process that led to the OCP that we have today that is contemplated on the agenda for amendment. So I just wanted to bring up some of the things that happened in that process. We had a pretty inclusive process, which included meeting with members of the community at Royal Bay High School and other places, and talk about how things had been going in the community for the last while. And it became very clear that there was a strong desire from members of the community to see us move towards site adaptive development, where instead of, working to move or obliterate features that are part of the natural landscape, we actually built our plan around those things. So that took a lot to make it happen. We had a special presenter come and speak. We had a workshop that members of the public were invited to actually cast a vote for how they wanted us to proceed with it. And we arrived at the OCP that we have today. And that was predicated on some developments that had negative consequences in the community, including terraforming with giant rock walls, Blue Sky Place, Wishart Gardens, Latoria Road, for example, and others where what you see on the plan when it comes before you at a meeting isn't really very reflective of what you're going to see and experience when you actually have to live with the development that occurs there. So we are to respect the waterways, the existing conditions.
Are you almost finished?
Almost done.
Okay, with a simple majority of the committee, we can extend that another 2 minutes. Is anyone opposed? Thank you so much. Carry on, please.
Thank you. So the whole idea was to try to work with the community and work with the existing topography. So a number of the properties that are in the OCP amendment contemplate an idea that was brought forward before that in 2008 and 2010 to actually move the creek away from Latoria Road. And besides being expensive and perhaps impossible in some locations, this continues despite the fact that our OCP says work with what you've got. And I think there's some real serious concerns in regards to carrying on with this development without respecting the nature. So my concern is that the very natural area that exists in the North Latoria corridor is likely to be negatively impacted by this development. And the creek may or may not successfully be moved with the same kind of integrity that it currently has. There's a big peat bog underneath that creek and all that lands around it. And that peat bog is both sequestering carbon, which is very important with climate change, but it is also filtering that water and reducing the flooding effects. So when we don't have that attenuation from that peat, then we're going to have a lot more scouring of the watershed further down. There are quite important aquatic animals there that support that whole ecosystem.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Would anyone else like to step up and address the committee? Ms. Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. Here to address specifically item 5.2. To avoid confusion, I'm also representing agenda item 5.3, but this is just the official community plan and mostly the western properties along the North Victoria or Latoria area. So this particular group of developers, Parsi and M Squared, are requesting that the city also perhaps consider an 8-story maximum and a higher floor space ratio if the developer can demonstrate amenities in excess of those suggested and discussed in the staff report. We certainly suggest that these amenities would not be a financial hardship on the developer should they be presented, and these will be coming forward in the coming months, so I won't expand on what they are. Essentially, we're just looking for an opportunity to be able to present those. So some of the extras, which are more in kind as opposed to financial, would include a seniors care facility, expanded daycare facilities, medical facilities, enhanced energy solutions and green buildings, and also some neighborhood hub commercials like a coffee shop and small scale commercial uses. So we also are requesting, just for arithmetic purposes, that the FAR can be considered on the overall lot area. We are required to provide the city with 30 meters of land from Latoria North for environmental enhancements and potential road widening. So perhaps some of that arithmetic could consider that land that's going to be dedicated as part of the overall floor space ratio. I know it's sort of semantic, but it's going to be presented as it is, and everyone will have a chance to see the benefits to the community when those all come forward. Without it, some of the economics of delivering these significant public benefits become extremely challenging. So the extra height and density gives the developer the opportunity to provide more for the community. And we will also hear about the baseline report that staff had commissioned to be able to get to 6 stories. But again, the developers may wish to offer a little bit more. We're also requesting that perhaps we be able to have some temporary access to Latoria, provided they're backed up by professional transportation studies. There's also a requirement for contiguous lot development. Some of these can actually be comfortably suited on some of the existing lots without having to consolidate next door. And also hoping that we're able to account for the tree canopy in some of the environmentally sensitive areas as restoration as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
I'd like to speak to 5.2.
Yes.
Library and
What?
5.3, but I'd like to speak at that time.
Mr. Day, we're going to do public participation now. So if you choose, if you would like to step
You're
forward.
saying I cannot speak before the agenda item?
Committee rules are the same as council rules. Is that, you're right. The answer is yes.
I can speak at that time.
Right.
Okay, I will.
We'll offer some public participation time.
5.2 and 5.3.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address committee? We'll circle back for you, Mr. Day. Don't let me forget.
Oh.
And moving right along, I'll close public participation, move to 5.1, Kaitlyn Suzuki.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen, and good evening. So I'm here tonight to introduce the variance request for 285 Perimeter Place. The applicant is proposing a set of exterior stairs along the right-hand side of their existing single-family home, connecting the front and rear yards. So in the image shown, the proposed stairs are highlighted yellow, with the front property line shown in green. The stairs are set back 1.4 meters from the side lot line, which is shown in purple. To enable this project, the applicant is requesting to vary section 2.1.04 of the land use bylaw to increase the permitted projection of steps into a required setback from 1 meters to 2 meters. So the subject property is located at 285 Perimeter Place in the Seaside neighborhood, just north of Beachlands. It is in the residential 3 or R3 zone and the neighborhood hillside and shoreline OCP designation. This area is currently largely made up of single-family homes. The area also has many slopes, as shown by the contour map here. This results in the rear yard of the subject property being approximately 5 meters lower than the front yard. The neighboring property to the south, adjacent to the proposed stairs, is also located at a lower elevation. Due to these slopes, the proposed stairs are expected to have limited visual impact from the public road and to the neighboring property. As mentioned, the subject property is in the hillside and shoreline neighborhood OCP land use designation. So this land use designation includes single detached homes and secondary suites as uses. It's also supportive of protecting views from public spaces. The OCP is also generally supportive of secondary suites. While the current proposal does not include a secondary suite, the proposed exterior stairs could facilitate one in the future, as it would provide a separate exterior access. The subject property is also located in some development permit areas, but due to the scale of the proposal and the existing human disturbance, a development permit is not required. So the land use bylaw requires a 3-meter setback for this property. Additionally, the land use bylaw permits steps to project 1 meter into this required setback. The proposed stairs project 1.4 meters. To permit this, the applicant is requesting a variance to increase the permitted projection into the required setback from 1 meter to 2 meters. So staff are supportive of this request, as the slope on the property limits the access to the rear yard without exterior stairs. The location of the proposed stairs along the side of the property would reduce their visual impact, aligning with the OCP. And the proposed exterior stairs could facilitate a potential future suite, also in alignment with the OCP. So a development notification sign has been placed on the property as shown. Additionally, notifications will be sent to properties within 100 meters of the subject property prior to council consideration of the variance request. So committee may choose to recommend to council that the variance is approved. This would permit an increase of the maximum projection of steps from 1 meters to 2 meters. Alternatively, committee could recommend that the variance is deferred for further information, that the variance is denied, or committee may provide another option for council consideration. Thank you for your time. I'm available if you have any questions. Additionally, the applicant is also here today to answer any questions if needed.
Thank you. And so the 411 is the proposed stairs are going to encroach into the setback. That's my read.
Yes, so the proposed stairs project 1.6 meters into the required 3-meter setback.
Okay, gotcha. And would the proponent like an opportunity to step forward and address the committee at all if they're here? You don't have to. Very good discussion. Let me get that. There you go.
Just a question, historical, I guess. So if you're not able to answer, anybody from the city or basically anybody here, I'm just curious as to what the initial logic is for the bylaw itself, just so I can make sure that whatever we are trying to protect the city or society from, that this is a reasonable request. So can anyone help me with that?
Through the chair to committee member Tony. So generally speaking, the setback is trying to create separation between buildings. And so we have regulations to protect encroachments from buildings into that setback. But then we have all sorts of, I'm going to say, portions of buildings that tend to project or encroach into that setback. And we have regulations that enable, like a chimney, like attachments to a building that are not a whole facade of a building encroaching into those setbacks. And it's supposed to moderate so that you are not bringing the wall closer to the line, but portions of it can are understood and acceptable, that certain parts of a building can go further than that setback line. I think the 1 meter line could be arbitrarily set as to what is a standard projection. Is it for a chimney or for what construction standards would have said a long time ago? I would say a 1 meter projection is commonplace throughout the bylaws, but it is a good point, fair point, to see where did it all originate from. And it's from elements of homes that were typical, or elements that we would normally typically see. We would normally, like for instance, if a set of steps or stairs was not attached to a building, then no, we consider them landscaping, and we allow them to be located within the setback. But if they are part of the building, then they are restricted to the 1 meter. And in some cases, the topography is such that steps down a slope have to expand beyond the 1 meter. So this is a perfect case in point where the 1 meter is not, due to the topography, which is not a realistic, achievable goal.
Is my mic still on? So is the initial concern privacy or encroachment of the neighbors? Like, I'm just trying to understand the logic and the rationale.
Yeah, I would say that generally we establish setbacks for privacy reasons.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Further to that point, it appears to me like that stairway is adjacent the rear property line for the house immediately, the house nearest. Is that right? Am my interpretation of the map correct?
So it is probably, I believe it shares a side property line with the neighboring lot, but the neighboring lot is set at a much lower elevation than the subject property.
Okay, I see. I gotcha. Boy, you need a front yard mower and a backyard mower in a house like this. Yeah, there you go. Any other discussion for committee? Sorry about that.
Sorry, two questions. First one, the encroachment over the setback is cited to be 1.6, but they're asking for a variance of 2 meters. Is there any history or background as to why they're asking for more than what they're planning for? I'm just trying to understand if there was guidance provided to the applicant by the city to just increase it by a meter, or yeah, any sort of history there. The reasoning of the question is, if we grant 2, what stops them from just going that extra half meter, right? Because a meter and a half reasonable, right? And then if you give 2, give an inch, take a mile, nonsense. So just really curious why it's a 2 meter variance request.
Thank you, and through the chair. So there was no specific direction from staff to do the 2 meter request. As you mentioned, the proposal shows a 1.6 meter projection. So there is so there is a difference between that 1.6 meters and the 2 meters as to what could potentially be done if the 2 meter variance was requested. I don't know if the applicant has any specific reasoning for doing the 2 meter request, or if it was just simply for round numbers.
I mean, I will I will add that in planning, we tend to not like the 0.5s or the 0.2 or the 0.6. Just we enjoy giving a buffer because in construction, it is hard to be to the centimeter. We know things happen. And so we like to not be back here asking for another 30 centimeters or 20 centimeters in the potential case that something goes outside of the plan. Like I think it's fair to say that they will aim for the plan that they have that is 1.6, but we don't want to find ourselves that it turned out to be 1.75.
Right.
And yeah, we generally give ourselves a few centimeters to spare.
Understood. And with that, this is a variance permit on a development permit. So like if they were to change the plans, that would void the development permit and they would require a different variance? More of a process.
That is a very good question. And so normally we present the plans to the committee and we write the variance so that the variance is granted on the specific ask, but not necessarily the like. So I guess let's say these steps move 2 meters over to the one side, that these variants would still stay true because what you are varying is the 1 meter to the 2 meter. So we wouldn't come back if the development changed as long as the changes remain consistent with the
I understand.
variation.
Great. Thank you. The other thing that I'm interested in is if we've heard anything from the neighbors, if there's been any form of consultation performed. Obviously the variance seems reasonable at face value, and Google Earth does an okay job of showing the very steep topography of the area. I don't see anything outright, but obviously it'd be nice to know that there's some engagement with the local neighbors, if any.
The applicant had noted in their letter of rationale that they had spoken with the neighbors that shared that side lot line with, and there weren't concerns at that time.
Thank you. And then just from a overarching thing, like that's a little bit outside of this, but I know in a couple previous committee meetings, I've mentioned that it would be preferred to see notifications go out to the public in the notification radius before like the committee meetings before, rather than the council, because I too would like to hear the voice of the people to help guide the recommendation from committee. So I'm not entirely sure what the appropriate forum or channel to actually get that into motion would be. But is there any mechanism to add an agenda item tonight or make it in as part of the recommendation that council also consider the time frame of which notifications go out to the surrounding neighborhood for agenda items that come to us?
So let's circle back to that if we need to, but my answer, my layperson answer would be that this is rigid within our bylaw, our zoning bylaws. This will require something more significant than just a brief discussion. We would have to add that to a future agenda. Would be my preference rather than kind of dealing with it ad hoc. Sorry, Yasmin, I'm sure you have a smarter answer than that.
Not smarter, but we have a notice bylaw. So we have probably 2-3 years ago when the legislation changed regarding all sorts of provincial mandates, we were also required to change the way in which we notify the public of applications. So we have a notice bylaw that establishes when we notified or not. So changes to that bylaw will require 4 readings and direction from council. So the committee can make a motion to advance a review of that bylaw to council, and then it'll be council's will if or how we notify. We currently do over notified.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a balance to be struck as to how in advance we notify. Like if you think about it, these applications were being presented to PLAC on the 7th and going to a council meeting referred to, what would it be, the 14th or the 28th of August? It would have to go to the August, so the delay of applications that come to PLAC, because the meeting that we have with this committee is once a month. And so there's always like a 4-week delay in notifying for this meeting and the next meeting. It would need almost 2 separate sets of notifications because they have such a different timeline for us to hit.
Thank
They're
you.
right, like the sweet spot of like how many, like,
Right.
will people remember we notify them a month and a half in advance?
So I guess the part of the answer too is that, you know, if this doesn't survive at committee, then why would we notify people in advance is the idea. But then this is committee, so they make recommendations, we make recommendations to council. So there's another kick at the can as it comes to council in that time period is when the relevant people get notified.
Yep.
So it all kind of builds together, but there's no reason why we can't have that discussion.
Okay, well, appreciate the insight, just trying to understand the mechanisms at play and where I can provide influence. Thank you.
Did I see someone else? Yeah, thank you, Kathleen. Go ahead.
My comment may be superfluous, but I just wanted to note that from my perspective, there is a solution for us as a committee. I understand our need to be notified, and in fact, I'm very, very concerned to hear about what neighbors think of proposed variances. But until it's discussed, I think what we can do is, if we have a concern that there hasn't been enough input from those who are affected, we can simply note that. So the council is at least aware that, you know, we're concerned. So it can be dealt with, I think, in a less formal way if needs be. So it works for our concerns about the cycle as well. So just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Ms. Doney. So I would like to bring this to a conclusion. Any final discussion? Is there a mover? Anyone want to suggested 4 recommendations? Thank you, Ms. Murray.
I'll try to say this properly, but I'd like to make a motion to for the Planning and Land Use Committee to approve option 1
So that's
based on the recommendation.
staff recommendation. Thank you so much. No seconder required. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And thank you, Kaitlyn. Calling 5.2, Ms. Givens. Yeah, so let's go with the presentation so everybody knows what we're talking about, and then I will come to you, Mr. Day.
Thank you and good evening, committee members. So we're here tonight to present the draft North Latoria area plan. So tonight I'll be providing a brief project update as well as summarizing the findings of the preliminary financial analysis conducted by Coriolis, and then ending with presenting on the highlights from the North Latoria area plan draft. So as you're aware, the North Latoria Visioning Project is intended to create a vision for the 13 properties shown on this slide. The project was envisioned to be completed in 4 phases, and we are now in phase 3, which is anticipated to result in a revised land use designation to support the implementation of the draft North Latoria area plan. The planning process began in the fall of 2022 with a review of existing policies and public engagement to introduce the project at a high level. Between the winter of 2023 and the spring of this year, we developed and refined land use concepts with council, the public, and various stakeholders. And since then, we've turned the final land use concept into draft policies within a local area plan, which is now presented to you for review. After this meeting, we are anticipating that this area plan will go to council for a workshop on July 14th, as well as being presented for adoption process this fall, including a public hearing. So as part of this project phase, the city retained Coriolis to evaluate the financial feasibility of the final land use concept that was presented back in March. The key takeaway from this study is that while the proposed density of 2.5 floor area ratio is financially viable in some cases, the bonus density framework originally contemplated within the land use concept was not feasible, not a feasible tool for securing additional amenities and benefits, in addition to the required development cost charges, community amenity cost charges, and the land dedications that will be required. So therefore, we're recommending that the bonus density framework be removed from the land use concept, and instead that 2.5 FAR and 6 stories be permitted as an outright maximum density in this area. So now I'll just kind of run through the highlights of the local area plan. So the vision statement is provided in the local area plan, but is paraphrased here. The vision statement for the area states that the corridor will be balanced, will support balanced growth with diverse housing, green space, and infrastructure, while protecting Latoria Creek and enhancing connectivity to nearby areas. The goals of the draft local area plan reflect what we heard throughout the engagement and align with the broader city priorities. These include protecting and enhancing the natural environment, enhancing ecological habitat by requiring green space and soft landscaping, encouraging the provision of active transportation facilities like multi-use paths and bike lanes, enabling a diverse range of land uses to support nearby commercial hubs at Royal Bay and Little Big View, improving the function and performance of Latoria Road as an arterial road and supporting multimodal movements. And lastly, ensuring that the infrastructure master planning supports the future growth of this area. So implementation of the local area plan is envisioned to be completed in a phased approach. Applicants will be required to enter into a development agreement through the development process and prior to adoption of any zoning bylaw. And this will secure the proposed phasing of infrastructure and community amenities that are proposed. Despite this, we do understand that the realignment of Latoria Creek cannot occur in a phased approach. Therefore, the city is requesting land dedication to support, to give the city control over those lands to support future realignment. So as mentioned, the land use concept was revised to support a maximum density of 2.5 FAR and 6 stories. The proposed uses that you see here still align with the land use concept that was presented in March. Importantly, this land use concept reflects community input and confirms the different housing types, infrastructure, and public green space that will be provided. To promote cohesive site planning and meaningful public benefits, only development proposals that incorporate at least 2 contiguous lots will be supported. Buildings are also must also be carefully sited on the lands in order to protect environmental features and tree canopy. In terms of the housing policies, the plan is targeting a minimum of 20% of new units to be dedicated towards meeting a local area of housing need, such as rental, affordable, accessible, seniors, or family-oriented housing. Housing agreements will be required in order to secure these types of units for a minimum of 20 years. This slide shows the proposed green space that we are hoping to target. As you'll see, we're requesting a dedication of the southern frontage of the properties that's measured from the south property line 30 meters in depth. We are also requesting that the green space around the North Latoria Creek that runs north to south also be dedicated to the city, either through as parkland or secured for public access through a SRW and easement. So development in the North Latoria corridor must follow site adaptive planning policies. Applicants will be required to dedicate land around Latoria Creek, as mentioned, and will also be ensuring that the city's parks DCCs are able to support restoration efforts around Latoria Creek. Preserving and enhancing the urban forest was a priority that emerged throughout the North Latoria corridor visioning planning process, and applicants will be required to retain at least 1/3 of the protected trees that are on their site. With respect to transportation, the policies in this area plan focus on improving multimodal connections, road dedications and road improvements, including transit and pedestrian improvements, will be required throughout the development process. Importantly, the plan requires all existing accesses on Latoria Road to be consolidated, as generally shown in the land use concept. No other accesses will be permitted unless it can be demonstrated that it's not feasible to consolidate, and that will be subject to city's review and approval. We also look at creating continuous pedestrian and cycling networks within the public rights of way and private lands. And the staff recommendation before you tonight is to forward the draft North Latoria area plan to council for endorsement, and that amendments be made to the OCP to incorporate the area plan into the OCP. Other options included tonight are to maintain the current OCP designations and not endorse the plan, or to defer the decision for additional information from staff. So this slide shows the next steps for this project. As mentioned, this plan will be going to council for a workshop on July 14th. Following that, the item will be forwarded to council on August 25th. Following this, staff will conduct public consultation on the area plan, including posting it to the Let's Talk Colwood page, as well as sending out referrals to external partners and agencies for their input. And then a public hearing will be held in September. Following this, we're anticipating third reading and adoption in October. And thank you so much. I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Desiree. And just as background, I mean, this is an initiative of council. The council, this current council felt that, well, we were seeing a flurry of activity in that stretch of roadway, and we asked staff to do this in a cohesive, collective fashion, and do it. In other words, do it once and do it right, so that we don't end up with some oddities as far as access and egress and entrances and what have you, let alone the stream that we've heard about. Mr. Day, I would like to invite you forward. You just come on forward and press the button there for us so I can activate your mic. There you go. You're good.
Oh, you can't hear me. I'll get too loud after a bit here. This is a crazy plan. It's a staff initiative. This is rural property, and the properties next to it are rural properties. They're large lots, and the people that bought there for their privacy. On our street and along Bunker Road, you can't see your neighbor's house, let alone looking in someone's window. So this is so inappropriate for this area. And in Colwood, there's room for 3,000 new units, they keep saying. That's a maximum flow of 4.7 million liters a day into the CRD wastewater treatment. This project alone will be more than 50% of the total wastewater capacity for Colwood, which means that more than half of Royal Bay can't be built, so that you can destroy the rural lands. And we've had a thing here, and I hope you've had a chance to read my letter, but the city has not been straight with anyone, with council or with the public. And that I brought in the note that came with the mailing with the tax forms this year, and says there's 310 new units built in 24 and 69 sewer connections. Well, the actuality is, since the start of 2023, Colwood has been growing by 600 units a year. 600 in 2023, 600 in 2024. That's 6% growth. It's unsustainable, and Colwood will be tapped out in 3 to 5 years without approving any more development.
Mr. Day, if you could hold that thought, is anyone opposed to extending Mr. Day's time? No one's opposed. Thank you. Another 2 minutes, please, Madam Clerk.
So the city does never show how many units are being produced. But what they do is, if you can find it in all the secret squirrel stuff, is they have these things called DBS reports, which makes it an account of how many houses are actually built. The common thing that's spread is there's about 250 a year, and there's 10 to 15 years to go. Don't worry about it. But there's 600 new units a year. And in 2023, there was 2023, 581 new units. In 2024, 656 new units. And the CRD also keeps track of these numbers. And they say that in 2023, 587 units were built in Colwood. In 2024, 627 units were built in Colwood. You will not find those numbers anywhere in any Colwood literature. It's always downplayed, like you can keep approving these kind of developments and nothing will happen. A moratorium should be placed on approving any new development in Colwood until council and staff understand that no more development can be approved in Colwood prior to 2045, when they get a new allotment for sewage treatment. So we're going to be up before 2030, and there'll be no development in Colwood till after 2045. Nothing will sustain what is being planned in Colwood. Half of Royal Bay will not fit in Colwood already. There's only 3,000. 6,000 have been approved in Royal Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Day. And thank you for the presentation from staff. And I would like to draw that back to committee now. Who would like to have a kick at this first? Mr. Perry.
Yeah, so obviously lots of things I'd like to make sure that we cover tonight, and perhaps I'll miss some things and like to revisit it as we have a discussion. So the first thing that I'd like to discuss is the tree preservation requirement. I really do like the visual provided of where the tree canopy exists. The one thing that is of question and was brought forward in one of the public participation items is if that 1/3 requirement is being proposed for the entire area that we are drawing, or if that's 1/3 per lot, because that will result in a stark difference in actual tree canopy preservation.
Thank you, Committee Member Perry, and through the chair. So the intention was that the tree canopy preservation ratio was going to be assessed on a proposal by proposal basis. I think without having the full picture or having all these properties come forward at once, it's difficult for staff to determine whether or not we're achieving that 33% target. So each rezoning application will be required to aim to provide at least 1/3 retention.
Right, and this is one of the, I guess, I really like the plan, right? Like as it's written, it's full of aspirations, it's full of really good ideas and intents. But where I am struggling to see is how we're going to be able to enact it when that area is split up so much through multiple different properties. So I'm really interested in understanding if we have any plan to actually enact the plan. Yeah, exactly. Like,
So I guess he's asking, how do we operationalize this plan rather than just sit it on a shelf?
Okay, I
thank
understand.
you.
I think we'd all be interested in.
Yes, so every time a rezoning application is brought forward to committee that's within the North Latoria area plan, it will be assessed under the policies policies within this draft plan. So as long as the proposals are meeting those policies, it is enacting or implementing the area plan. I hope.
You have the first application of a set of 5 that we already have with us as active rezoning applications. So I would say this plan is not to sit on a shelf, is to actually facilitate conversation around active applications that we have. So this is the opposite of what we normally do with local area planning, where we kind of think of like a blue sky scenario. We have engaged with property owners for nearly almost 3 years in conversations as to that try to balance where the community tells us they want to be and where financially these property owners needed to be for a development to make sense. Um, and so I would say how we will implement, you got the first application for 3 properties before you tonight.
Right.
This is implementing. This is actively looking for implementation on a decision by decision basis on rezonings, and they are the first of probably 3 that we will be progressively bringing forward. I think some of our applicants have been patiently waiting. So this particular applicant was eager to come to committee and council at the same time as the plan. Our preference would be to settle the plan for them to then discuss the specifics of each application, but I would say it is a very good first test of like, do the tenants and the principles and policies of the local area plan reflect on what you're seeing on the application later on tonight.
And what I'm ultimately trying to drive towards is based on where the tree canopy is, it's going to be extremely hard to be equitable across each of the lots. And so in the interest of trying to preserve as much of that natural habitat as possible, I'm just trying to bring forward the concern that if we're looking at it at like lot by lot, and I acknowledge that you are I can't speak. Like we are putting the plan into motion through the rezoning, but that's almost my point is like, look, this property is rezoning, meets the requirements, and then we get to the ones that are going to be the most contentious and they're going to be heavily restricted. And then like the viability of developing there may be extremely hard. And so I endorse the idea of this plan. I am only trying to raise my personal belief that there's going to be parts of it that are going to fall apart without cohesion across all these lots, and hopefully we can see them be consolidated into single parcels of land for development rather than have them continue to be split up in this way. So the other thing that was brought forward was the movement of the creek. I know that that was a very loose conversation in a previous committee meeting, and you know, it was just brought forward in public participation a moment ago. I didn't see anything in this area plan about the movement of the creek. I do not believe there's any endorsement of doing so. I'm just interested in understanding where the city's position is on that particular concept.
Thank you for the question. So you are correct that the plan doesn't include direction for the city to realign the creek, but we are acquiring the area around Latoria Creek to provide us flexibility in case that's what council decides to choose in the future. We do understand that the current position or location of the creek is very close to the road, and that's having negative impacts on the ecosystem health of that creek. So realigning it would potentially help improve the ecosystem health, but essentially this plan helps facilitate realignment and restoration of the creek, but doesn't give that final endorsement or direction. That would be considered through a future update to the park improvement DCCs to include that as a new project.
And to append to that, we don't know how Latoria Road itself is going to shake out as far as the size and the configuration and how many lanes. and you start moving away from the, you know, if you increase the size of the road, well, then we're getting into the area of the creek. So it kind of all fits together, and decisions or haven't been made yet, roadway and stuff. So anything else engineering wise? I don't even know how one moves a creek, Mr. Rosenberg, but presumably.
There's certainly a lot of applications involved. We have had preliminary discussions with the province, and they definitely want to see the creek moved as one item. You can't really phase a creek movement, as Director Hernandez said earlier. We have had a study down in the creek that does basically show that it's very difficult to have habitat concerning with fish, just because there's not enough dissolved oxygen in the creek. There's no shading, there's no riffling, so temperatures. There's a lot that's not happening in that creek that by moving it away from the roadway, whether it's to expand it or just to move it away from the roadway, it would allow things like riffling, meandering, shading, and potentially, I would think, clearing up the creek with regards to allowing for better habitat chance in that area. Though obviously there's damage being done lots there, but first indications are if we do it all at once, the province probably would be on board, but it will be problematic to say the least.
And then the last thing I wanted to, or sorry, second to last, I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time. The FAR of 2.5, there was mention of applying that on the original lot size before any concession to the city. Is that something that's done before? Like, do we have examples where the FAR being calculated is based on a previous lot size, not the current after rezoning?
Generally, our practice is to calculate FAR after the land dedication has been calculated, or after the land dedication has been given to the city. Once the application advances to building permit stage, we will be looking at the lot area at the time. So FAR is, you know, gross floor area of the buildings divided by lot area. So if we calculate it prior to land dedication, it won't match when we get to building permit stage. The FAR will be much higher than what we are seeing at rezoning. So our practice is to calculate it prior to, calculate it after the land dedication has been removed.
One caveat to that is when we have park dedication. So when someone dedicates parkland, then we calculate density in the original size of the lot, because we don't, the Land Title Act does not penalize people for dedicating parkland. The challenge with us here on this corridor is that we are not taking park dedication because there's all sorts of technicalities about how you relocate a creek and the implications of having parkland where you're going to be enabling access, and there's existing services that are crossing these 30-meter swath of land. So there's a lot of almost like too much technicality, but for all intents and purposes, I fully understand the request of the applicants so that we consider these 30-meter land transfer. I call it a land transfer because it's not a park dedication or road dedication. So it's a land transfer, and for the city to consider it as part of calculate the 2.5 on the original, that would be equivalent to treating it as park dedication. But recognizing that it's not officially or formally park dedication, we can certainly take your feedback and comment on that. And we are drafting, I guess, with every rezoning application, we are carefully fine-tuning the language of the development agreement covenant. And so we certainly can add some language to clarify how we would go about calculating as an administrative exercise at building permit the density requirements. So it would formalize something that the Land Title Act already allows for park dedication, but recognizing that given the particulars of these scenario, park dedication would be too constraining for us to undertake the roadworks and improvements necessary to realign the creek.
Thank you. And the last thing that I want to speak to is mostly trying to build an understanding. First and foremost, Mr. Day, thank you for the materials that you've submitted. And from the perspective of someone who doesn't truly understand what our sewage network looks like and where the infrastructure is placed and what the capacities really are and how we integrate with the CRD, there really is just two narratives at play that I hear time and time again, and I really wish I could understand where the truth is, because it's as dire as we are driving off a cliff, and in a matter of years we will have toilets overflowing, and then on the other side it's blue skies and like we got years and years of runway, there's no concern. And I'm not saying that one side is accurate. What I'm trying to say is that there's something in between, and there's a massive misunderstanding that I would love to hope to distill and understand. So based on my very loose understanding, we have an allotment of capacity. If we were to go over that capacity, we have to buy more from the CRD, and that comes at a premium cost, and only at a later date do we get a renewed allotment from the CRD. So before we dig into outright details, can I just get a baseline and understanding of what's going on here and the factors at play and why there's such a difference in opinion on this matter?
Don't really have an opinion. I just have numbers that I go by. The CRD calculates our flows on a quarterly basis. Those flows are considered, they've got flow meters in their pipes. So they know how much flows from Colwood, how much flows from each municipality. When they first started the treatment plant piece, each municipality was asked, how much would you like? So we each got an allocation piece. That allocation piece, there's 9 participants. Of those 9 participants currently involved, we are 8 with regards to how much we're using compared to the rest. So there's 7 other municipalities or participants that are using more of their sewer allotment than we are. Of those 9, there's 7 that are municipalities that have a significant amount. That amount that we put into that is 4%. So someone like Victoria is 30% of that allotment. Their allocation is at 77%. Langford, which is growing way faster than we are, is at a total allocation of 14 compared to our 4, and they're at 71%. So it's anticipated that others like Saanich, Victoria, Langford, they'll have to solve this problem before we do. And they'll do that with the CRD. The CRD has put mechanisms in. So right now, the formula is if somebody, one of the participants will give you some of their allocation, then it just goes back to, okay, how much did we charge that participant for the 1 megaliter you wanted over the last, since the beginning of time when we had this? That number then is transferred to the other people and they buy that back from them, and then they move on with that cost. That cost would be borne by all the participants that's in that sewer allocation. So in Colwood, who's ever currently owns it, if we buy more, then it would be split by everybody that has sewer to increase it. And then obviously as you buy, so economies of scale. So we don't see that being a problem now. So in 2023, our flow rate megaliter was 2.81 megaliters. In 2024, the flow rates were 2.94 megaliters. So over the year, the difference was 0.13 additional megaliters. Okay, so a lot of numbers, and you can do what you want with numbers, but that's an increase of 1.13 megaliters. We currently have 1.757 megaliters available to us. So if you made the assumption, which that's all it is at this point, that we continue to grow at the same rate we did from 23 to 24, you'd have about 13 years left. But I don't know how we're going to grow over the next 13 years. If we grow at double what we're doing now, then we'd only have 6. If it slows down, then we might have 20. But just based on that math, on actual flow rates, not theoretical, not. So back in the day, people would use 300 liters a day, but that's when we didn't have regulated flow rate toilets, and we had, we didn't worry about how much our washing machines and our dishwashers and all those other things consumed. Now our rates usually, and for our master study purposes, we use 170 liters instead of 300. But ultimately, we're using real data on real flow rates. So I can't tell you how long it's going to last. I'm quite confident that Langford, Victoria, Sandwich, those places will need it well before us. I don't know when that is either. And I'm pretty confident that based on 1.13 of 1.7, we have several years left. That's about as much as I can give you.
I appreciate the insight, I truly do. And in addition to the overall allocation from the CRD, when we look at more like local infrastructure, are there particular lift houses or actual pipelines that are reaching capacity, right? Even though we may not be hitting Colwoods overall, are there particular areas that are struggling and could be points of concern?
No. Our pipes from a capacity point of view, which is different than a treatment point of view, that's our collection network. One of the things we do as a municipality is we have to worry about the maintenance of these pipe systems. So even though you'd be on a cul-de-sac that might have 10 houses, that would really only need like a 2-inch or 50 millimeters, depending on your age, size of a pipe, we put in a 200 millimeter or an 8-inch pipe, because we don't want diapers and dinky cars and all those other things blocking our pipes and us having to go out there every week to fix a blockage. So we make the pipes way bigger than they need to. When we get onto a busy street like a Suzuki Road, a Latoria, a Machosen, we then make the pipe even bigger. It'll be 300 millimeters, 12 inches, 450 millimeters, 18 inches. It'll be a lot bigger. Because we have hills, a lot of those pipes are at a steep grade. The minute you put a steep grade on a pipe, it takes the capacity up significantly. Our lift stations currently are fine and shall be for quite some time. We do have 3 lift stations that will require some upgrades. One of them is our main lift station, which is lift station 4 down on Machosen Road. That'll be upgraded as part of the Beachlands requirements. When we get to a certain level, they're required to build that lift station down in the Beachland area, because that's the low point, and then it'll pump up the hill. So we currently don't have any capacity issues with regards to the network piping system. We do have a couple of recognized lift stations that are many years, and they're currently not in our 5-year financial plan.
Thank you. And the last question is a bit more, I'll call it speculative, but with all of what Royal Bay is going to be, and with all of the known areas of densification that we're anticipating, like where do we feel we are landing in terms of like current capacity, the next 15 years worth of development that we anticipate, like based on all of the area plans that we've built out, like recently the Colwood Corners came into fruition, the expansion of that area plan all the way down the Old Island Highway, and Royal Bay, these North Latoria, all the other areas that we're planning to make center hubs, Suzuki and VMP as examples. Like, where do we have an idea of where we're going to land with all that?
Yes. Our master sewer plan allocated for Beachlands, allocated for Royal Bay, allocated for Olympic View. It really is about when it comes, not how much of it comes. We'll be able to handle how much. It's a matter of when. So, if for some reason every single unit that we've said yes to was built tomorrow, which is impossible, we might have a problem. But again, I don't know how many units are out there. Like, there's numbers that are different, right? There's units that we've said yes to. Here's a rezoning that could build 300 units. But when they rezone, they might only build 175. They might build 200. We don't know how many units those are going to be built, but they have the ability to build 300. So I don't know how many of those units are actually going to be built, but those units generally take some time to build. So again, we've got years and years until those units show up, because even when they say, yes, we're going to build it, it's usually a 3-year build. So it does take time. So I can't speak to how fast they're going to come, but we have planned for an eventual population of 40,000 and change. What I also don't know, and again, it changes, that's why I can't give you a real number, is the province came along and said, hey, we're going to allow up to 6 units on one lot, right? When we did the plan in 2022, we didn't envision that. So although that's allowed, it's likely not going to occur in very many places. One for us is because we don't have sewer in a lot of places. We only have 45% of our population on sewer. We're unique in the region where we have a lot of sewering to still go. And that's going to be, it's right now, rough estimate is over $100 million of work to get everybody on sewers. That's a decade's worth of work. So all of those people can't even get to sewers. Even if we said tomorrow, let's put everybody on sewers, it's going to be a decade or more. So I can't answer when. I can say we have plans. All of our lift stations have flow rates. None of our lift stations are in peril of not being able to pump the sewage out in time. Nothing's going to overflow. We have no pipes that are surcharging. And it would be quite some time before any of that occurred, but I can't give you a date.
I really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rosenberg. And I think it's fair to say that there's more to follow on sewers for the region in the near future, and largely will fall to the larger communities to lead the charge on that. And I don't even think, is the CRD even put this on the radar yet as far as discussion?
We haven't seen any formalized plans from the regional district at this time.
When that sewage plant was built, though, it was built with the ability to expand capacity with.
I believe it's another 16 megaliters they can build onto the current plant.
Gotcha. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Perry. Thank you. There you go.
So just a clarification on that last comment. So the CRD does have capacity to increase the treatment plant. Have they allocated 100% of their current capacity?
No, their current capacity throughout the region is 70.9%.
Okay.
So we're using, they're using 76.6 of 108.
Okay.
So there's still that buffer of 24, 32, plus another 12 or so they can put in there, 16, something like that. So there's another 40 megaliters, and they're currently using just shy of, or just over 76.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think you kind of touched on it as far as the discrepancy that came out at public participation, discrepancy in the number of units. I think you touched on that a little bit, actual numbers versus what could be built. So I appreciate that. And perfect. I think that's all the questions I had as well. One last time, I'll bring it back to committee. Would someone on this end of the table like to come up with a recommendation at all? Mr. Perry.
I'd like to make the motion that we advance the staff recommendation of adopting the Latoria area plan.
Turn my mic on. Sorry, final discussion. Seeing none, I will ask for all those in favor. Thank you. And opposed? One opposed. That. Thank you so much. 5.3.
I am going to be presenting on behalf of Desiree.
Desiree.
Yeah, no. I will be taking over this presentation. I will not be able to do as good a job as Desiree does, but I will do my best. So thank you. This next item is the rezoning application for 532 and 542 Latoria Road. So this is the first application that we bring forward to committee located within the North Latoria corridor. This application represents 3 properties, 532, 538, and 542 Latoria Road. The land use of those properties goes from A1 agricultural 1 to R1, which is our single family residential zone. And the lands are designated neighborhood hillside in the OCP designation. So the OCP designation, the current bill forms that are enabled within the neighborhood hillside are low-rise multi-unit residential up to 6 stories and a floor area ratio of up to approximately 1.2 FAR. The public realm policies that guide development within these lands speak to objectives like improving public realm for pedestrian, creating high degree of permeability, and protecting and maximizing, optimizing views from public spaces. We pay special care to assess the natural assets of the lands and work with the topography as well as identifying elements to protect and try to cluster development to preserve key features of the land. The objective, the policy objective is to retain 40% of the site as an open space, and it could be accomplished as private or public open space with an overall intent of 40% being open. So when reviewed against the North Latoria area plan that we just discussed earlier this evening, and we look at the proposed bill form, so the proposal is includes multi-unit residential up to 6 stories, proposing an FAR of 2.5. And the buildings are located in a way that preserve the existing canopy in as much as possible and minimize the impacts to ecologically sensitive features. In the case of the North Latoria corridor, we define the most ecologically valuable asset of those lands to be the riparian element. So that is what is prioritized over tree canopy and landform or the hillside topography is the creek and riparian element that is a top priority as an ecological feature. So the local area plan as discussed, we target 20% of the total units for the purpose of addressing a key area of local need. And we are proposing a housing agreement to secure the proposed housing types for 20 years as a tenure, so that when we enter a development agreement or a housing agreement, that there is some certainty of tenure to the rental element. If a proposal comes forward with a rental component, we want to secure it for a minimum of 20 years. The parks and green spaces policies, we have an objective to secure and achieve public parks and green space throughout the development process and conserve land along the creek, but also pay special attention to the landscaping in and around the buildings. So we have, for this application, we have also attached the arborist report, the tree management plan, and we are looking for preserving at least 1/3 of the existing protected trees on the land. The development is following a site adaptive planning framework in as much as possible. I think it's fair to also say that we take the site adaptive planning framework within the constraints. There are already a lot of environmental constraints to the development of these sites. So we take the spirit and the objectives and goals of site adaptive planning, but we are not looking for the perfect integration because it is not possible to put that many constraints. We know that at some point there's got to be some level of flexibility, but it's about prioritizing the ecological um, values within the area, riparian being the first one, then canopy, and then uh, the hillside rock um, topography. Um, and as discussed, as part of these rezoning applications, we are part of our development agreement will include the terms for a land transfer of a fee simple lot along Latoria Road for a 30-meter wide stretch of land to accommodate future realignment and restoration of Latoria Creek. As well, this creek relocation is part of what we need to implement the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the mountain beach to mountain trail network that would connect Havenwood Park down to Latoria Walk, across from these properties and onto Latoria Creek Park. So it is part of a greater objective of park connectivity. Currently, Latoria Road, as it's said, it doesn't have sufficient width for cycling uh, sidewalks, certainly not to the standard uh, of our subdivision servicing bylaw, but accommodating multimodal modes of transportation and proximity and access to green space are top priorities that we're negotiating as we review and enter these rezoning applications. So speaking to the transportation policies that guide us, is improvements to Latoria Road um, to support better and improved transit services, walkable and bike-friendly routes that currently that particular road stretch is not able to accommodate. We have, much like for we have been discussing the development of a number of these properties for a good number of years as part of the development of the local area plan. But for this particular application, the applicant has also engaged the neighborhood. Um, there is a development sign posted on the property. Postcards will be mailed to neighbors within 100 meters of the property to notify them of when council will be considering readings for an amending bylaw. Um, you may also notice that tonight there is no amending bylaw before you tonight. It is purposeful that we want you to take in the local area plan, give us your thoughts as to what are the terms of the land use regulations that are presented in the report. In terms of high density, what is your opinion on the proposal as it said? But we haven't gone through the step of drafting an amending bylaw. We want to hear the comments and insight of the committee, and we want to go to council to hear what their feel is for the local area plan and the parameters that we've established at the high level for 2.5 FAR, 6 stories. If those are, um, if council is in agreement with staff to proceed with those parameters, then we will implement through this rezoning application and reflect some of those expectations onto an amending bylaw. Table 3 in the staff report does include a comparison of what is proposed for this particular application, but no amending bylaw. So we foresee being here with you tonight, going to council on August 25th, and having first reading of an actual amending bylaw in the fall at the end of October. Because we would like to have a sense of comfort with the local area plan for council. We would like and readings on the local area plan to gain certainty that the foundation of the policy is well endorsed or well on its way for endorsement before we can give readings to individual applications. So it is a very, very preliminary conversation, and we welcome your thoughts and comments on the proposed parameters that will regulate development on these 3 lots. So it's a table 3 of the report. And basically our recommendation is that if you like what you see in table 3 or the proposal as a whole, that the recommendation is that staff prepare amending bylaws to bring forward to council in that fall once the local area plan has been considered and hopefully endorsed or advanced in however way council sees it advancing.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I see there's 4 staff. I'm sorry, are you finished?
Yeah, no,
Or-
no,
you are-
that's
you're
okay. I mean,
finished,
it's not my presentation, so I didn't know how many slides.
Sure. And we have 4 recommendations, and they're in our documents here. So, and yes, next let's turn to the proponents. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. And my name is Rachel Sansom. And for this application, I'm representing the Land Vision Group for these 3 properties on the east end of the Latoria North Corridor. So we've been working with these 3 parcels for many years with staff, and very excited to see us come before committee as well as work with this local area plan. As staff noted, we're actually all of the developers in this corridor started work together to hopefully save a little bit of staff time, but also come up with a comprehensive view of how this corridor can work at build out. There's certainly a lot of work to do, a lot of units. It'll be a lengthy build out. Certainly these units aren't going to appear tomorrow, but having this well thought out practical process will certainly help guide everybody. So a lot of these properties, as noted, they're rural residential, but they're very impacted by these rural residential uses. You can see that there's hayfields, work yards, landscaping. So they're not really in their natural state anymore. They've been impacted over the years by these uses. The plan is 4 buildings, 4 6-story buildings. I believe we meet the FSR at 2.5 as discussed on the remainder parcel. Latoria Creek does wind through these properties, so it actually moves a little bit outside that 30-meter dedicated corridor. So the SPIA, the Streamside Protection Enhancement Area, actually exists on the development property as well. So the appropriate setbacks for that, as well as a buffer zone, are incorporated into these plans. The project biologist will be watching this carefully and certainly monitoring all construction. We'll get a little bit more into that when we get into the site adaptive planning part. So these 4 multifamily buildings for a total of 313 homes, certainly trying for a mix of units. And we've been really careful to make sure there's a lot of 3-bedroom units to encourage families to live in this area. Of course, affordability is a huge component now of being able to own or even rent a home, and making sure that families have a place here as well. I should note that the first building to be constructed on 532, which is the easternmost, will be a rental property. So we'll be doing extensive landscaping with trees, plantings, amenity areas, using native species as much as we can, as well as drought resisting species. We're not requesting any variances at this time. We're certainly no parking variances, and we'll have secure bike parking as well for each building. We're working with the neighbor to the west to have a single access that across from Besanton, which will be signalized. We're currently located between Latoria Walk and the Royal Bay neighborhood, so there's commercial areas there as well as potential commercial areas in this area as well. And of course, walking distance to Havenwood Park, Latoria Creek, and the parks at Royal Bay and Royal Beach. New elementary schools at Latoria, at Royal Bay as well, as well as our middle schools and secondary schools. This will also be a frequent transit route once the density is there. So it is on the BC Transit website as a potential frequent transit, and that's a bus every 15 minutes. And of course, we must comply with the new BC Building Code standards for structural and seismic stability, as well as accessibility. So as noted, we conducted what they call site adaptive planning analysis of these sites. So we're working with two sets of biologists. We had one look at the land values and another look at the riparian. We're trying to get a consistent view of the riparian area. So Latoria Creek is primarily a man-made creek. It was constructed with Latoria Road by the Highways Department back in the day. But the fish have found it and they've turned it into their home. So we're really looking forward to being part of the enhancements of that creek and making it a better place for the fish to live. This property also has a north-south drainage course that you can see in the blue that collects at the north end of the site. Currently, this is pretty much choked with blackberries and you can't even see it really. So as part of the development, this will be cleaned up and developed under the, again, watchful eye of our project biologists at the appropriate time of year to become better fish habitat. And not only fish habitat, but also the waters that bring food and nutrients to the fish downstream. So it's really important that these are treated properly. You can see our tree canopy again on that northeast corner of the site and a few major trees in and around the site. Now those yellow dots are our test holes because any developer can tell you the first thing you do when you buy a property is look at a geotechnical report. So you'll see there's been talk of this peat bog on the southern part of the site. So there is peat. Test holes 1 and 2 on the bottom have peat at a depth of about 5.8 meters and 5.6 meters. The parkade itself will be deeper than that, but these test holes are also within the 30-meter setback. So the presence of peat doesn't necessarily impact this development, and it's also not that deep as you go sort of to the north and west. It gets shallower, and then we get into the typical tills and gravels that we see in Colwood. We do not have any rock outcrops on these properties. So after doing that analysis, we found that the areas with the least impact would be these orange squares. So we're staying away from the riparian areas, staying away from the peat areas, and preserving that cluster of trees on that northeast corner of the site. So this is all in accordance with our biologist report and our arborist report, who have both endorsed the site adaptive plan. And here's our buildings overlaid on that plan. So you can see the area sort of in the light green to the north of that 30-meter dedication area is that additional riparian on this property. So not only dedicating that 30 meters, but additional riparian and also enhancing that north-south water course and preserving the trees in the upper northeast corner. And we've also included a few images of an enhanced creek that's probably a little wider than Latoria Creek. But the idea is to provide riffles, rocks, shade areas, places for fish to hide, places for nutrition to gather, so the fish will have a happier place to live, and also a lot cleaner water because the water will be moving better and get more oxygen. More examples. There's an example of these little weirs that create the riffles and safe places for fish, as well as rocks. Of course, in the summertime, it'll dry out a little bit. So that bottom image is sort of like a mini version of what you see at Royal Bay with sort of a dry creek. So even when it's not full of water, it has a lovely presence. It'll look nice and it'll be planted with riparian appropriate vegetation. So our landscape plan includes a lot of places on the podium of the parkades. The parkades are at level, so they don't stick up out of the ground. So they're a great place to create gathering spots, community gardens, barbecues, a playground even for the residents to enjoy. But we'll also incorporate walkways so the residents can get out and around the neighborhood as well. We are planting any additional trees in those riparian areas, but we do have quite a few trees on site. But we'll be supplementing those with additional trees. So we probably will have more trees when we're done than what we started with. And these are a few views. These are actually from renderings we had done last summer. Again, we were all working together as a development group and had some renderings done of how it would all look. So the upper view is what it would look like from Latoria Road, the Besanton connection. And this is what it looks like from Elizabeth Ann. just to give you an idea. And these are some sections through the building. So you can see how the buildings are stepping down with the existing grade. Yes, there will be some excavation. We don't anticipate much in the way of blasting. There may be a little bit. But the goal was to kind of arrive at an elevation of the buildings that was as close as possible to the existing grades. So for site servicing, again, the intersection at Besington was a big issue and comment from the neighbors that we did speak with about that. The intersection isn't working very well right now. So the addition of these units certainly would cause an issue. We have agreed then to provide a signalized intersection here, certainly at the direction of engineering and what they would like to see, as well as our traffic consultants. But that's sort of a commitment we've all made. It'll be shared with the developer to the west as well. And then it'll have private internal roads. So those ones are maintained and cared for by the strata, so no cost to the city. Water and sewer would also be in those alignments. There's currently sewer and water in Latoria Road. And of course, we've worked with all the utilities to ensure that there's capacity for these developments. Emergency vehicle access on site has to be proven out to the satisfaction of the fire chief so that a fire vehicle can get in and out properly. And there's the Colwood design fire truck at the bottom there. And of course, all these buildings are fully sprinklered in accordance with the BC building code. So our consultation, we actually did it twice. We did a consultation in 2022. And again, this year, we've reached out to neighbors within that 100-meter radius. I did have a handful of emails from the previous consultation, so I did reach out to those neighbors directly. I heard from about 5 neighbors altogether. Certainly the north boundary, there's some blackberries up at the top end of the site. So those neighbors requested that we get rid of all those invasive species and provide new solid board fencing, which we will do. The traffic concerns at Besington, we touched on already, and of course, working closely with staff to make sure that we provide the right sort of traffic solutions that work for everybody there. Sewer connections, there may be potential for additional sewers. We haven't really explored that yet. Most of the sewers will be in Latoria. And then just general questions about the height and density and whether there be any commercial uses on these properties. Thank you very much. We're here to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sansom. And I'll tell you what, I have a couple just for you before we bring it back to staff. But the signalized intersection, oftentimes we hear, when the density gets there, let's build the intersection. I guess this is more of a statement, but I'd love for that signalized intersection be delivered early in the project to the net benefit of the surrounding community and early purchasers or people that move into the project. Not necessarily day one, but
yeah, I think that would be something we could discuss with staff. There's still a little bit of work to do around what that alignment of Latoria looks like as far as where the infrastructure would go. But certainly installing things like the ductwork, making sure that the intersection works geometrically can be worked out on day one. And then actually, once you get the ductwork in, putting up the lights and the signal timers isn't really that onerous. So it's just a matter of making sure we have the design right and we're not doing it twice. But I understand that it would be a bonus to have that done earlier.
Elizabeth Ann Park at the top right corner, which I guess would be the southwest corner at the end of Elizabeth Ann Drive. Will there be a connection, a neighborhood, a connection through the property? Like, will there be a path or anything like that? Like, will that park connect down to the trail that's conceived or thought?
Yeah, if I can speak to that briefly, Mr. Chair, we did, when we spoke with that neighborhood, they weren't keen on any connections coming through there. They were actually concerned that people would park there and walk through.
I recall that.
Yeah, so it certainly could be incorporated into a landscape plan. It does descend into the tree protected area that we're working with, so we don't really want to interrupt by providing pedestrian access, and it's not that far of a walk around. So something we can work with staff in the development permit process, but my understanding was the Elizabeth Ann residents were not keen on having a connection. Gotcha. And further, we did, working extensively with staff last summer, work on a lot of different road alignments through here. One of them did come through and across, and it didn't work. It didn't work topographically. It didn't really make sense to have a road parallel to Latoria that was that close. So that notion was discussed and dismissed.
I remember some of those diagrams. I think it's great that we're looking at one exit out onto Byzantium rather than a bunch of exits like we currently have. So kudos to the development team and the developers in that area. And I think it's laudable if we can work towards the one exit and the one major intersection that would service the area well, I think.
If I may, though, there might be temporary accesses until that is completed using existing driveways all the way along. But again, those would have to be proven out to be technically and safe with the engineering department, of course. So you might see other accesses being used in the short term, but the end game is to have it all come at Pleasanton. And then on the west side, there's another proposed road right across from Latoria Walk. I can't remember the name of the road.
Yes. Thank you. That's it. Anything for the proponent from committee? Don't go far. Maybe have a seat because more than likely someone will have something. I did have a question for staff. Jasmine, the 30-meter dedication, which we've heard all about. Fast forward, council determines that the stream isn't going to get moved. Now we have a 30-meter dedication. Clearly it's ours because it comes to us. What's the fallback? What's the plan B? Does it turn into park space? What do we do with it?
Absolutely. So the intent behind the land take is to, I would say that the guiding principles over the plan are environmental restoration and enhancement and mobility, like enhanced mobility, multimodal. Worst comes to worst, Latoria Road never gets expanded and the creek does not move because cost prohibitive, whatever reason it is, there will still be a swath of land that will provide an enhanced buffer to the existing creek as where it sits, separating it from developed lands that can be treated as park and amenitized as a city amenity, and it will just provide access to open public space. The riparian regulations don't allow trails to exist within environmentally protected area unless it is owned by a municipality. We are a higher level of stewardship than a property owner would be. And so us being in control of that asset allows future generations to be in close proximity of nature in a way that we can control access and outcome and amenities within it as we see fit.
Gotcha. So
And thus the need to take it as a fee simple lot, like to allow best possibilities. The future is unknown, but if it needs to be a road, it could accommodate a road. If it can be a park, it will be a park.
Right.
Ultimately, we want to protect and enhance green space for that neighborhood. And at a minimum, we will secure those 30 meters for open space.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's bring it back to committee. Yes, Madam.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to remind you that there was public participation after the applicant.
Thank you so much. I said, don't let me forget, Mr. Day. Why don't you come forward?
Okay. Yeah, you've heard a lot, and it's interesting. Certainly not based on any facts, but presently the creek is 34 meters from the edge of the road. So the 30 meters won't even include the creek. And as was explained, you can't put that path next to the creek. You can't draw it through someone's property and put it in a creek bed. I just started. Okay. So it's not a path. It's not a multi-use trail. It's riparian area. You got to leave it alone. There's that path and all that stuff is just crap. We are building 600 units a year, have been doing it for a couple of years. That's 6% growth. Langford is building at 4% growth. Langford doesn't have enough sewer capacity, but they have a lot more than Colwood. Colwood will run out of theirs before anyone that flows into the CRD wastewater treatment plant because they only got 4% when the CRD said take 7, so you can at least have a minimal amount of a buffer. They didn't take it, so there is no buffer, there is no sewage treatment, there's no magic solution. The only person, the only community you can buy sewers from is Langford, because the line is restricted going through Esquimalt, and they're not digging up Esquimalt. So that Colwood can do unlimited building in green spaces. So I'd just like to point out, if you see my letter, some misrepresentation. It's page 34 of 332, and it's got a bar graph, and it's got the North Latoria proposed, existing, and then it's got another big giant graph of available capacity. Well, that big giant graph of available capacity is if you build out to the OCP as it stands without approving this.
Is anyone opposed to allowing Mr. Day another 2 minutes? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so that is 127 milliliters a day, which is 11 liters a second, which is 11 million liters a day. So Colwood is short 7 million liters a day before this proposal for 1,500 units. You can kid yourself, but when you have 6% growth, those volumes in those pipes are going to go straight up. Yeah, they haven't gone up yet, but if you look at the graph for Langford at 4% growth, and then you put on top of it 6% growth for Colwood, it will be very soon. Don't worry about the flows right now. It won't be long. It'll be another 3 years. You'll be hitting up against it, and you'll see what a poor plan this is. And the green space will be gone, and the neighborhood will be destroyed. And it has no respect for the existing residents there. This is not proper to put 6 and 8 story buildings in someone's backyard. It's farmland. It was always farmland. And we have horses in our backyard. To have 6 and 8 story buildings is offensive and rude. No consideration. And this thing about this is called 13. Do you know when this thing was conceived? They talk about years ago. June 30th of this year is the date on this rezoning application. They've changed all the numbers. You can't tell what the hell's going on. They're into the 40s, but the latest one is 13, June 30th. So don't believe that we've had a chance to think this over. 1 week since we've known about this. So don't say that they've consulted with the neighbors and everything is fine. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Day. And now I'll bring it back to committee. Sorry, is there anyone else? Thank you. Please step forward, sir. Just name and address for the record would be great.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair and members, staff. My name is Todd Mazook. I'm owner of the 2 properties beside this applicant, 554 and 546. Just obviously some very polar opposite comments. One thing that I did want to make sure that the committee knew is that we have been working with staff for 4 years. And it was through the encouragement of staff, because there was some comments about how we didn't want to work in isolated properties, that was very much encouraged over 2 years ago that we would work as a collective group. So there's only 3 property owners, and 2 of us are merging together. This leaves our friends to the east as the other owner. We have been collectively working as a whole on a regular meeting basis with not just ourselves, but our teams of engineers, geologists, biologists, So there's one biologist, but multiple firms that share that information that concur with those same informations around the biology of the creek, the geology of the soil. So I think that's important to note. More importantly, I work in the municipal sector, and I want to compliment Mr. Rosenberg for his comments tonight and explanation around sewer, because it's probably one of the best I've heard. And I concur 100% with what he is saying. And it's what my team of engineers and our group of engineers have communicated to us about sewer utilities, water. And like was said by Yasmin, we do look at those preliminary issues at the start of buying property. Is there supporting servicing? Is there a demand? But it also goes to the details of what's the neighborhood growth strategy? What are the OCP plans? And this is the first in 4 years that we have some guidance that the community and the city are getting approached by what I would say a very collaborative 4-year approach to what an official community plan change will be for North Latoria. So I think I will compliment the staff because they've been very generous with good communication tonight, and we appreciate your time and listening to the application. So thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Mazik. Back to committee. Come on, James. I got my bit out already.
I'm really curious how tall the privacy fence that was mentioned is going to be. If we're looking at 6-story buildings and maintaining line of sight privacy to the probably 2-story buildings next door, what does that look like? There's a pretty steep viewing angle.
There is, thank you through the chair. The fence is 6 feet tall, like 1.8 meters. But we are also providing additional tree planting at those areas where we're going to be remediating the blackberries and invasive species. And we are downslope. So certainly there are tall buildings in the backyards, but they will be downslope, and we'll screen them as best we can between the building and the property line.
Thank you. With respect to this actual line item, I have very mixed feelings, and the materials put forward in the presentation by the city and the presentation by the applicant look great. The thing that I struggled with immensely was trying to ratify what was said in bullet points on a PowerPoint presentation against the document that we were delivered. It is a 228-page single PDF with no bookmarks. I confess that it was I wasn't able to consume it. I'm not able to confidently understand what's in it and all the things that it entails. There is a plethora of material in front of me, and it's not something that I can speak to with confidence. I tried my hardest. I confess that my computer may be a little underpowered, but it struggled to render the PDF on multiple pages. You find yourself several pages deep. You read something, you think, I just read something similar to that. I want to reference it. You're scrolling. I consumed a lot of time, and I got maybe 75 pages through. So while I like what I see in front of me, it's hard for me to sit here and endorse it as an individual who values, like, if I'm putting my name on something, I want to know that I understand it fully. And so I understand that there were some technical difficulties with the software used to produce the materials, but I really just want to echo how valuable I find having each of the pieces individually pulled out and in their own cohesive document, bookmarking if possible, markup of redlining also usually available. So it's it's very difficult. So unfortunately, this is not something that I can personally endorse, and that's mostly just because I could not consume the materials that was presented to me.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And I mean, I'll look to staff. Were there some issues that arose in consolidating the report? Was there anything unique about this particular?
We have been working, we work with an application called iCompass. They are working on getting us the HTML version. I have been assured that that is fixed by the end of this week. I tried everything in my power to have it ready for planning and land use today because I know these meetings are heavy. However, it just didn't get there.
Thank you. But we're working towards a solution.
I have been assured it will be fixed by the end of the week.
Absent that, I hate to say it, but at the request of committee, quite frankly, when we run into issues like that, then we should be offering a binder copy for committee members to come and pick up to take home and read at their leisure as an alternative. We can take that up at a later time. Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. I guess I just have some questions around the first building. I think that you were talking about being a rental building. Is that correct? And my question is, and I don't know if this is true because I don't know. I just know from like people talking that there's like a building that's up on Latoria near Olympic View that has rental condos in it and they're empty because they're too expensive and nobody can afford to rent them. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just concerned, like what kind of price point is it that are going to be in these rentals? Are they going to be able to be rented to the average person? And I personally am a bit more of a fan of townhouses because I know we're trying to accommodate families by putting 3-bedroom condos in there, but I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone who has 2 or 3 kids aspires to live in a condo, but that's just my opinion. Overall, I do like the presentation and I'm not necessarily opposed, but I'm concerned about us just building more and more condos.
Thank you. Through the chair, certainly the owners can attest to the fact you cannot get financing for a project unless you have it either pre-sold or in the case of the rental, it'll be CMHC financing, which requires that 20% of the units are offered at below market rates. And that's based on 30% of income and people actually apply for those units. But again, nobody wants an empty building. So developers and marketers look at the market rates, what's available, what's fair. Certainly they want to lease up these buildings as soon as they can. So offering more affordability even for shorter terms might be an answer to get people housed. Certainly this is an area that's going to offer a lot of services. Ideally the frequent bus service will come along, so it'll be attractive to people that just can't afford the townhouse or the single family, and it's a stepping stone, or it's a downsize. There's the idea is to make the ideas attractive as we can to attract all parts of the demographic. So that being said, certainly nobody wants to build a building that's not occupied because that doesn't end well. So we do our homework and we make sure that there's a market before the shovels go in the ground.
Thank you, Rachel. And anyone else at committee? Thank you. One further question, Rachel. One of my pet peeves, and it appears to be a pet peeve of council, and I can't remember if we talked about this at a previous meeting or not, but the disconnect between a unit and a parking spot, which seems to be all the rage nowadays, where the owner of the building monetizes the parking spot. What's the plan in that regard?
Again, it depends on whether it's a market condo where usually the parking space is assigned to a building, or if it's a rental situation, the management company assigns the parking, because if you can imagine, people come and go more frequently in a rental, and some people may not need cars, and that would free up another one. So it's a little easier to manage in a rental situation, but in a condo, normally you're assigned a space. And then there's leftover for visitors or extras,
I
depending
think
on.
more to the point, along the same lines of Miss Murray, that there is an affordability threshold. So when there's an extra $100 required for the parking spot to park your vehicle, because there is no opportunity for on-street, and that was something that we do hear from the community quite a bit. So there's an opportunity here to draw a connection between the spot and the unit and offer
I
parking.
think that's fairly standard, and if I could look at staff, I believe that would perhaps form part of a development agreement. to ensure that, you know, somebody didn't get left out because all the parking was subscribed or that they were having to pay for it. And I know what you mean. You've seen it where people are having to park in the street because
Or they park
they
up
didn't
that
want to spend an
Elizabeth,
extra $100.
Elizabeth Ann and march through
That would
the
not be good.
woods.
So we'll try to avoid that.
Awesome. Thank you. Any final thoughts from committee? I am looking for a mover. Why don't we go down to this side of the table? Thank you. Kathleen, let's see here. Go ahead.
I move that the committee adopt the recommendations of staff.
Thank you. The staff recommendation. Discussion. Seeing none. Okay, I see you all at once. Hang on for just a second. Let's activate your mic here. Ladies first. Go ahead.
I didn't think that there was anything to actually action here. I thought we were just like having a discussion and they wanted to hear what we had to say. Is that not true?
So my understanding of the staff recommendation is they let's have a look. What is it? Planning. So it's about directing staff to come back with some wording for a bylaw in the future. Help me out, Jasmine.
Yes, so it is endorsement of this as a concept so that we come back with an amending bylaw in the terms of a development agreement. So normally, what you normally see in these types of rezoning applications, we always bring you the amending bylaw and a development agreement terms, and it's pages and pages at the beginning of the recommendation. What we're doing here is asking you, do you endorse the concept, like the proposal as it's been presented? And then we will come back to council and present the amending bylaw and the development agreement conditions. There are a lot of moving pieces to these applications, and as we say, there's not going to be readings on this application until October 27th. So we are wanting to hear early on where the committee sits and if they are supportive of advancing these two bylaw preparation.
Thank you, Jasmine. Does that answer your question? Thank you, Mr. Perry.
So as previously stated, a lot of what I see is good. I like the mix of units, the 1, 2, 3 bedroom. There's the rental with the affordable housing, like purpose-built rental is obviously ideal. I think that with Royal Bay being very townhome and single family focused, that like having centric areas of condo and apartments really does add to the mix, especially when we think of like what that area will look like in the future as like a neighborhood center. You do want density right at the hub of it, and that is at the intersection. So from like just at the face value, things look good. But again, like with all the materials presented, like I'm only going off of a handful of bullet points. And that's where it becomes hard to say like, yes, like everything you've just given me in this report is like I endorse. But I hope that at least some of the commentary pieces there can provide guidance. The issues with moving the creek, I'm still like on the fence on. I think that there's merit in both sides of the conversation, and I'd like to make sure that the care that it deserves continues forward, which I certainly believe the city is demonstrating for it. But I also haven't heard any large scale like neighborhood concerns in that area. So I yeah, that's my personal thoughts on that. So the only thing that I wanted to speak to the discussion on the motion is I'd like to add something around making sure that the content is digestible for council when it does come forward. While committee recommendation is little more than a recommendation, I'd hate for the counselors to have to consume the document as it currently stands.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. And we do digest a lot of materials and have to find a way to try and do it effectively. And I know staff are working on this, and I've expressed some of my concerns to staff on the way our agendas are constructed. So it is an ongoing process. And unfortunately, we're only as good as the software developer, I guess, quite frankly. Awesome, thank you. So I would like to call the question. Let's go with all those in favor. And opposed. Mr. Perry's opposed. That passes. Thank you so much. And anyone up for adjournment? Yeah, thank you. And anyone opposed to adjournment? Seeing none, thank you. I'll call that a wrap. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff.